So previously we saw how the image of Guadalupe had just appeared on this cloth, on the tilma. And we saw how the bishop had been praying for a sign, for a miracle, because there were now tensions rising between all the local tribes and the Spanish. And so his sign was given with this cascade of flowers in the tilma of Juan Diego, the roses, and also a much greater sign for the whole nation. On the tilma itself, OLady of Guadalupe appeared. So we want to also know what happened to Juan Diego and his uncle, who had been at death's door when we last saw him. OLady had promised that he would be healed. Was he? Or did these two simply disappear into the obscurity of history? Let's find out now. Hello friends and followers of great saints, going from Padre Pio and beyond to look at the examples and experiences of other great saints for all of our inspiration. Do join us in this journey. Let's continue with our story. So from being seen as a fraud and possibly even insane, Juan Diego, with this new image of Guadalupe that had appeared on his poncho, was now seen as some sort of a prodigy, an answer to the prayers of the bishop. And so he was invited to stay at the bishop's palace for a couple of weeks. The bishop had wanted to find out everything, every aspect of this vision for himself. And after this, Juan now returned to his own village. He was a hero. And there Juan was overjoyed to discover what had happened to his uncle, also Juan Bernardino. So remember last time we saw him, he was literally breathing his last. And here he was in front of Juan Diego, now completely cured. So what had happened? Now as Juan Diego started telling his uncle the story of the apparitions, his uncle just seemed to nod, as if he already knew everything. And after this, he proceeded now to give his own astonishing account of what had happened to him. That morning, when his nephew had departed to call a priest, the uncle just became too weak, even to drink any water or to take the medicine right there by his bed. And he realized, he felt the last moments were now approaching. When suddenly, he says, the room was flooded with a light, and a very beautiful lady appeared. She was radiant, and there was this indescribable peace and joy in the room. And the uncle, he said, he immediately felt this fever depart from him. And so after this, he fell to his knees before the celestial vision of Our Lady. And the lady told him how she had intercepted Juan Diego that morning and had sent him off on another mission to the bishop with the sacred image on his tilma. And she also revealed to the uncle that she wished to be known by a certain title. So Our Lady's promise had come to be filled in this incredible way. Now strangely enough, when the interpreter explained the uncle's account to the bishop, he rendered her title as Holy Mary of Guadalupe, which left Bishop Zumagara absolutely astounded, because he knew of one other Guadalupe, and it was not in Mexico, it was back home. It was a famous shrine in Spain. And that shrine, in fact, also housed the statue of Guadalupe, which tradition has it, tells us, it goes way, way back, trace it to the year 500, even earlier, that statue had belonged to the evangelist, Saint Luke. But something seems to have happened in the translation, because the local Indian dialect, Naholt, doesn't have the letters G or D. So I'm not sure how you get the word Guadalupe without a G or a D. The most likely seems to have been the phonetic equivalent. So it sounds very similar to this word here on the screen, and it's pronounced Tequetalupe, meaning who saves us from the devourer. The devourer in the Aztec culture was the serpent god, one of their most terrible gods. And so it's uncannily similar to, from the book of Genesis, she will crush the serpent's head. Now, shortly after the spectacular revelation of this image, as we would expect, pilgrims and curiosity seekers started to arrive at the cathedral. They just wanted to see this image for themselves. And there they also heard where she had appeared up on the hill, on Tepeyac Hill. And so they made little pilgrimages up onto the hill, and they would kneel there and they would pray. And for the bishop, this was now the sign that it was time to heed Our Lady's request and for a little shrine to be built on Tepeyac Hill. So he put out a request for any volunteers to help. Within just 2 weeks, a small stone structure had been completed, and this was her new chapel. And then, on the 26th of December 1531, there was a triumphant procession. They had to take the image from the cathedral up to the chapel. And so this was the procession with the bishop leading the way. There was an atmosphere of festivities and jubilation. Bishop Zumagara was at the front leading the way of the procession, and behind him followed these crowds of people. There was this carnival atmosphere, as we said, flowers being strewn across the road, dancing music, even burning sweet-smelling herbs. And people cheered in one voice, "The Virgin is one of us, our clean, our pure mother. Our sovereign lady is one of us." A group of Mexicans, they got completely carried away and they started off firing volleys of arrows straight up into the air. Of course, these arrows had to come down, and unfortunately a bystander was hit directly in the neck. He died there instantly on the spot. So what a tragedy this now is. Our Lady's procession being marked with a death. So the dead man was now carried up through the crowds, through the throngs. He was placed before the image, and in one voice they all pleaded to the mother of the Christian religion, "Please help us." And the minutes passed, and then there was a flicker of life on his face. His eyes moved slightly. Shortly after that, the dead man stood up. He was fully recovered. And of course, there were gasps of amazement all around. An indescribable joy broke out. And for the moment, Spaniards and Mexicans embraced one another in signs of genuine brotherly love. So was it now that the tides were turning, a new nation was being born, the antagonisms were slowly going to drift away? It still took many years before this was complete. And then when the ceremonies finally drew to a close, Bishop Zumagara, he was very happy to place Juan Diego in charge of this new shrine. Imagine, one of the local Mexican Indians, the first person in charge of the shrine. And a little room was also built on the side of the shrine where Juan Diego could live. Juan Diego became a very holy person after that, and a wise man. Another interesting thing is that among the early documents we find out what happened to that Mexican who had been raised to life. He also remained at the Tepeyac shrine, keeping the little building clean as the throngs and throngs of people started pouring in to see the image and to hear the stories. Now, not long after this, the bishop had to return to Spain temporarily, but he was very happy that he could leave someone so reliable as Juan Diego in charge of Our Lady's shrine. And when we think back one episode earlier, he was regarding this Juan Diego as a fraud or perhaps even insane. Now he's happy to leave him in charge. So what an incredible change had happened. Of course, all of these happenings, news spread out all over the country. After that, they were inundated with even more waves of pilgrims starting to arrive. They wanted to see the image, the one they now called Tonantzin, which means our mother. This image has such a charm about it because she's both Spanish and she's also Indian somehow at the same time. They say she almost changes complexion as you approach. And there's something like a code of hieroglyphs written all over the image. The Indians were able to read these hieroglyphs and to decipher and to understand what this image, what it meant to them, even though the Spaniards themselves were unaware of all of these things. And so it made such a deep impact on all of them. Juan Diego's apostolate had only just begun. So you can imagine what it must have been like. You go there, you see the image, and then you can go and speak to the one who had actually received the apparitions, and he can explain it firsthand. He's one of your own, a native, speaks in your own language and tells you all the incidents that happened. Then after that you can go and speak to the Indian who had the arrow in his neck. You can inquire from him, is he perfectly healed? What happened to him? And so she very quickly became our new mother, known as our new mother. Now Juan Diego had to explain to these unending crowds all of these things. And with this, he was able to give them the elements, just the essentials of the Christian, of the Catholic faith. And of course, we know if the fruit must be good, it has to always lead, Mary has to always lead to Christ. And so the conversion started happening. The Spaniards were unable to keep up with the catechizing the new people and baptizing the new people. And the very efficient Aztec courier system spread these messages, everything that new that happened there, to the furthest corners of Mexico. And just a matter of time, the crowds of pilgrims became waves, and the waves, they became torrents, and the conversions came in by the millions. As we said, the missionaries were inundated, absolutely unable to keep up. And for the 5 million souls that had been lost to the church in Europe, that was part of the Reformation, 8 or 10 million were added in Mexico. Do join us next time. We'll be having a look at some of the miracles of Our Lady of Guadalupe, of the image, miraculous little things, the signs and wonders, the hieroglyphs, what they mean, what they meant to the Indians. Do join us for that talk. We ask you also to be part of our apostolate. Make sure that you have subscribed to our channel and that you have clicked the reminder bell. And also do help us by liking the video and sharing this video with friends and colleagues.
Bogorodice